Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 66th part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 66, The Beast/Hell Forest. Can I open my eyes now? Izumi asked, still holding onto Achiko for dear life, eyes closed shut. No, her girlfriend replied as they floated down slowly. But I'll tell you when you can. Okay, Izumi said, waiting for Achiko to give her the all clear. Achiko meanwhile was downright pissed off. The teachers knew Izumi had panic attacks when she fell from a great height. Yes, they were working to help her overcome them, but throwing her off the side of a cliff wasn't going to help her. If anything, it'll make getting through the forest harder. Words were going to be had once they reached the campsite. Hot hey, on the plus side she's sharing the campsite with Rolls, so that was a plus. It didn't take them long to float down to the ground safely, landing just as the other students were clambering out of the dirt. All right. Anyone not dead, sound off. Setsuna's head, which wasn't attached to her body, shouted. Also, has anyone seen my body anywhere? There was a grumble of groans and moans as 79 Harrow students from 2 different schools clambered onto their feet. Who shouted foul? Hirio asked as he brushed himself off. That would be me, Setsuna replied. Well, it sure is different from last year, a CI girl with tan skin and dark brown hair that was tied in a long ponytail, remarked as she got up. At least we shouldn't have to fight each other in our swimsuits whilst over a pit of melted marshmallows, Psycho said as she got out a thermos flask. Making this armored was the best decision I ever had. Pardon. Minoru gagged. What the hell did these girls have to do during their previous camp? Izumi blushed heavily. That was not an image she wanted in her head. You have 3 hours to get through the Beast Forest and reach the camp. Mandalay shouted down from above. Kittens who don't get there by 12:30 don't get lunch. Achiko blared up at her. I am going to have words with them once we get to the camp. You are, Achiko, is it okay to let go now? Izumi asked shakily. It is, Achiko replied gently. Izumi nodded before she slowly allowed herself to put her feet down on the ground and let go of Achiko. Once she was sure she was standing on solid ground, she slowly opened her eyes. You okay? Achiko asked, a concerned look on her face. I am fine, Izumi replied shakily. But, danger sense has become unreliable for the moment. It's like the very ground beneath us is a threat to us. But, with Pixie Bob around, that's to be expected, she said before there was a loud explosion, and a part of the ground blew up. I am really getting tired of these fucking logical ruses. Katsuki shouted, one hand sparking with small explosions whilst the other was around Kami, helping her stand. Izumi shivered. Right, she almost forgot, 1B was here as well. That meant 2 weeks in close proximity to Katsuki. She's been at this camp for less than 10 minutes and already she hated it here. Alright people, you heard the teachers. Tenya said, chopping his arm. We have 3 hours to get through this forest. I suggest we all work together to get through it. Izumi, do you know anything about this beast forest? Hitoshi asked, knowing full well she was a hero nerd and would probably know about this place. No. It never came up in any documents about them, Izumi replied, shaking her head. If anything, she's got the name wrong. Their agency is supposed to be located in the Endo Forest, not Beast Forest, she yelped as someone grabbed her from behind and started to grope her breasts. And it wasn't May. The woman behind her had long, soft blonde hair with a blue headband that had a ribbon on each side of her head, and bright blue eyes. There was a rather perverted expression on her face. The girl giggled. Squishy squishy, squishy squishy, she said in a perverted tone. So many new boobs to squish. Achiko reacted to the pervert accordingly, and punched the girl in the face. Hard. Sending her flying over towards the CI girls. Back off, creep. She fumed, absolutely done with today. Wow, Sue gasped as most of the class's jaws dropped. Who knew that Achiko also had a feral side? I feel like stabbing that girl, Himiko remarked, a cross look on her face and brandishing a knife. She did not like the idea of a non-Snuggle Squad member getting handsy with their cinnamon roll. Minoru covered his face with his hands. He was not going to survive the next 2 weeks. A CI girl with long, straight, refined-looking black hair that went down to her thighs, and dark blue eyes, sighed. 5 minutes, Katsuragi. Can you keep your hands to yourself for 5 minutes? Another CI girl with light brown hair tied into 2 thin bun things on the sides, and dark green eyes with glasses over them, sighed. And here I hoped that we could get through this without antagonizing the UA students. Izumi, you okay? Achiko asked with a very worried look on her face. I am fine, Izumi replied shakily. Honestly, she preferred Mei's measuring to whatever the hell that was. I was just caught off guard. You know, I'm annoyed that danger sense didn't go off for that, Hikage remarked, sounding annoyed. Second, please stop planning murder. The third user said. You've got your murder planning face on. I'm not planning murder, the second's user replied calmly. I'm just planning to maim or seriously injure someone. If she dies because of it, then it's her own fault for not seeking medical attention. Izumi sighed. And now the vestiges were planning to murder someone. Great. Fantastic. Just what she needed. Also, why does Second keep getting so protective of her? Okay, people. Psycho said loudly, using a megaphone. Izumi had no idea where she got it from. I know we may be off to a rocky start, but we've got bigger things to worry about, like getting through this Force Dash. She said before there was a loud, bone-shattering roar. What the fuck was that? Yosetsu asked, looking around. There was another roar, followed by the sound of a tree falling down. The gathered students then watched as several sinister beasts walked out of the forest. Each one's body was made up of soil and stone, with grass and other plant life covering parts of them. Pixie Bob's earth constructs. Izumi gasped. I didn't know that she could make so many. Oh, they're hers. Achiko grinned before she leapt over to a nearby fallen tree, removed its gravity, and proceeded to use it like a baseball bat to smash several of them in a single swing. I am going to enjoy breaking these. And she's gone feral as well, Durandal remarked. I'm starting to think it's contagious. Izumi blushed. Why does she find this hot? Achiko grinned as she proceeded to smash up the remaining constructs. Well, that was Dash, she remarked before the constructs all reformed around her. Easy, she said before sighing. I really hate that woman. One of the earth constructs pounced towards Achiko, only for it to be kicked into dust by Izumi. She's reconstructing her constructs. We'll have to keep moving, otherwise they'll overwhelm us. You heard the vice prez. Let's go. Mina shouted before she and the rest of 1A, plus Mei and Chiharu, charged into the forest. Wait, vice prez? Katsuki said, looking confused. Wondering how Izumi became the vice president of Class 1A. He shook his head. Damn it, he growled before he blasted himself into the forest, quickly followed by the rest of 1B. Well, what are you girls standing around for? Rolls asked, looking at the shocked CI2A and 2B girls. We're second years. Get moving. The CI girls quickly got moving and chased after the UA students, catching up quickly and joining the fight against the earth constructs. It was almost shocking how many constructs Pixie Bob was sending against them. And she was reforming them after they were destroyed. Izumi was right, they had to keep moving, otherwise they would be bogged down fighting these things. Luckily, they had their quirks to help them. Tenya, Ijiro, Koji, Toru, Denki, Hitoshi and Rikido were kicking or punching them apart, with Koji summoning a few animals to help. Nito was helping out as well by copying Ijiro's quirk. Inesa was smashing them apart with his tornadoes, which had the added benefit of spreading their remains out and making it harder for them to reform. Minoru and Hanta were using their quicks to stick the constructs in place, with a few of Minoru's balls having detonators thanks to Momo. Mina was just melting them with her acid whilst Kyoko was using sound waves to break them apart. Fumikage was using dark shadow to smash them up, the darkness caused by the forest canopy making it excellent conditions for the living shadow. And Yui was just shrinking the constructs and stepping on them. It was simple but effective. The Snuggle Squad were doing well as well. Sue was jumping from tree to tree using her long tongue to grab the smaller constructs and smash them against the ground. Himiko was stabbing all the things, Momo was making anything that they needed, Mei opted to wear Isaac and was one of those energy stun guns that look like the Dead Space plasma cutter to cut the constructs up. Izumi was still waiting for permission to use the one Mei made for her, and Chiharu, whilst she couldn't use her minds, thanks to her Chiharu flattener, could still blast the constructs apart with explosions. Achiko, meanwhile, was still welding the fallen tree she had picked up earlier, quoting, "I'm going to use this to ask some questions from our teachers." A sentence filled Izumi with both dread and arousal. Why was her girlfriend so hot when she was terrifying? Izumi meanwhile was using One for All at 12% and was using her now perfected fighting style, shoot style, to good use, kicking the constructs apart. Okay, so Danger Sense was useless due to it telling her the very ground she was running across was her enemy, but the other quirks she had were still usable. Save for Black Whip, as she still hadn't gotten that one under control. Durandal meanwhile had pulled out the chainsaw and was going full Blade Wolf on the constructs, even if Izumi didn't quite get the reference. The 1B students were pulling their weight as well, smashing up constructs left and right. As were the CI girls, but they were doing far more damage to the constructs numbers and doing so much faster than the UA students. As expected from second years. They've had a good year's more training than them. They even had weapons with them, which included a slingshot, bow, hammers, spears, oddly designed pistols, a rifle, large gauntlets, armored boots, which were worn by the pervy girl, sides, some odd-looking robot thing, a freaking bucket and frying pan, and a hell of a lot of swords. Seriously, one of them was holding 6 swords in her hands, for crying out loud. Wait, where did the CI girls get their weapons from? They weren't carrying them when they left the boss, and Momo certainly didn't make them. Well, wherever they got them from, they sure knew how to use them, as they were tearing through constructs like something straight out of a hack-and-slash game. A few of them were using their quirks, but most of them were using weapons. Most of CI's Hero Course students didn't have combat-oriented quirks, but a few did. Rolls was just ripping the constructs apart with her mind. Another girl was using small amounts of ice to break them apart, another had turned herself into a horse, and another was making holograms of people to distract the constructs, among other quirks that were being used. Izumi was going to have fun analyzing the CI girls' quirks. But later, once they were out of this forest, and Danger Sense stopped ringing inside of her head. Meanwhile, with the teachers. Well, they appear to be making good time, Ragdoll remarked whilst at the safety of the camp, using her quirk to keep track of all 82 students. Unfortunately, her quirk could not help her keep track of the 2 robots that were with them, but they were probably close to their owners. If they keep this pace up, they should be here in about 4 to 5 hours. Mandalay sighed. That's still too slow. We need to speed them up a bit. Shuichi looked down at his watch. Hour and a half is up. That means she's heading after them now. Are you sure this is a good idea? Yamako asked. Those 2 aren't going to go easy on them. Villains are getting stronger and bolder, Shota replied. And like it or not, All Might's retirement is coming, sooner rather than later. We need to prepare these kids for the hell that is to come with his retirement. They need to be the best, the greatest even. To do that, we need to put them through hell. Besides, our first years survived Gran Torino, Kana added. They can survive those too. I'm sorry, who's Gran Torino? Yamako asked. Don't ask, the 4 members of the Wild Pussycats plus Kana and Shota replied. Meanwhile, back at the road the students were thrown off of. The homeroom teacher for CI Class 2B, Suzune, stood at the side of the road overlooking the forest. Her phone suddenly started to beep. Looks like their head start is up, she remarked as someone landed beside her, cracking the ground beneath them. Indeed it is, a masculine-sounding female voice said beside her. Let's show these students a thing or two. Back in the forest, the 82 students had made good progress. They were about a third of the way through and were cutting through Pixie Bob's constructs like they were paper. Things were looking up until Izumi suddenly cried out as she collapsed onto the floor, clutching her head. Izumi! Achiko cried out as she rushed over to her girlfriend to see if she was okay. What's wrong? Something's coming. Izumi cried, panting heavily. Danger Sense was going off like a tornado siren. Just like it had gone off against Torino. Something strong and powerful is chasing after us. Several of the UA students shuddered. Please tell me it's not Gran Torino? Nina begged. Izumi shook her head. I can't tell who it is, but the feeling is almost like his. I don't know how far away it is, but it's approaching us fast. The UA students did not even need to be told to run. Sprinting as fast as their legs could carry them. They did not know if it was Gran Torino chasing them, but if Izumi said that it was as dangerous as him, then they didn't want to face them. Fucking double-time it, people. Katsuki shouted, really not wanting to play another game of Dodge the Angry Old Guy again. Especially now that he was no longer old. Achiko dropped the tree she had been holding and picked up Izumi, using her quirk to make her lighter to carry. She then rushed off after the others, carrying Izumi in a bridal carry. For Izumi, however, her head was killing her. Feeling the constant danger from the ground beneath them for the past hour and a half was not helping her head, not helped by the stunt their teachers pulled on them earlier. And with the sudden appearance of this new, dangerous threat, it was just too much for her to handle. She could hardly think. Sometimes she wished Danger Sense had an off switch. The CI girls meanwhile just looked on in confusion as the UA students rushed off as if the devil himself was chasing them. Does anyone know who this Gran Torino is? A well-endowed girl with short and rough brown hair with braids going down each side, and a blue eye, the other being covered by an eye patch, asked, speaking with a Hungarian accent. No, Psycho replied. But I have a feeling that I don't want to know who they are, seeing that they apparently put the fear of God into 2 UA hero course classes. The rest of the CI girls simply nodded in agreement before booking it after the UA students. None of them wanted to meet either this Gran Torino or whoever it was who was chasing after them. The next 2 hours or so were spent running for their goddamn lives from an approaching unknown horror. The students, knowing that there was something utterly terrifying chasing after them, stormed through the forest. Any of the earth constructs they came across were bypassed and ignored, only attacking the constructs that could not be avoided. None of them, not even Durandal, wanted to be around when the threat caught up with them. With the threat of imminent death fast approaching them from behind, they were very well motivated to move much faster than they were previously moving at. Unfortunately, thanks to Danger Sense constantly blaring inside of her head, Izumi was practically out. She wasn't unconscious, the pain in her head prevented that, but she was practically unable to do anything. At least she had a caring girlfriend to carry her. We're close. Rolls shouted. I can sense the minds of the teachers. If we keep this pace up, we should be there in 10 minutes. Great. A CI girl who had short, messy, dark blue hair and a welding mask over her face remarked. Don't jinx it. Minoru shouted. Oh come on, what's the worst that could? The CI girl remarked before she was promptly hit by a tree and sent flying into several more students, knocking them all down. I said don't jinx it. Minoru screamed as another tree flew over him, knocking down several more students and putting a dead stop to their progress. What the fuck? Katsuki shouted as he blasted a tree apart, only to get a punch to the face for his troubles, sending him flying backwards into a tree. Who the fuck did that? Ulki fumed before he froze, freezing up at the sight of the person who just punched him. Several other students looked up and gulped. Standing amongst the remains of several smashed-up trees was a muscular woman with long, flowing black hair and reddish-brown eyes, as well as the owner of the largest bust in the room. She was wearing a tattered navy blue gakurin and matching colored cap with metal epaulets, a rope belt around her waist and tengugeta on her feet. Her rather large-sized bosom was wrapped up in a sarasher, with bandages wrapped around her hands and wrists. So, you're the next generation of heroes, the woman said, her voice lacking any form of femininity. Let's see what you've got then. All 82 students gulped. Everyone knew who Japan's current top 10 was, and this woman was among their number. The fighting hero, Daidoji. Japan's number 6 hero. Well, shit. Well, at least it can't get any worse, Denki remarked nervously before Minoru shoved one of his sticky balls into his mouth. What did I say about jinxing it? The short boy shouted before, with a loud slash, every tree around them was felled with a single clean cut. Well, aren't you lot foolish, a female voice said before another woman landed beside Daidoji. She was a tall woman with purple hair tied into a ponytail and red eyes. She wore a tight sleeveless navy blue shirt that didn't cover her stomach, a face mask, a red triangular-shaped scarf, baggy red pants with knee-length black high-top sandals, and gray cloth wrapped around her waist. She was also holding 2 rings, each one had 3 sharp blades on them. Staying still when a new enemy approaches. Not something you'll want to be doing out in the field, the woman continued, brandishing her blades. Let's correct that. Had Izumi's head not currently felt like it had several people hammering nails into it, she might have been able to recognize who the newcomer was. Unfortunately, she did not, so her identity remained a secret to the UA students. The CI students, however, knew who she was very well, and were downright terrified. Especially the 2B girls, because she was their homeroom teacher. The shinobi hero, Rin. An unfortunate member of the last homeroom class Gran Torino ever taught before retiring. Durandal said it best. We are totally fucked. 15 minutes later. Well, great job in getting here within the time limit, Mandalay said, trying to keep a positive attitude despite the fact that all 82 students were currently lying on the ground, their uniforms in ruins. It did not help that the only reason why they got here within the time limit was that they had practically been thrown/punched there, and were now looking worse for wear. Even Rolls, who had OP please nerf psychic powers, had her arse handed to her by the 2 pro heroes. There were only so many trees she could stop with her mind after all. Maybe getting a member of the top 10 to help out may have been a bad idea. There were only 2 people who had managed to escape the slaughter. Izumi and Achiko. And they only escaped because Achiko practically yeeted them both out of there, with the gravity girl currently glaring a hole into Pixie Bob's soul. Izumi was glaring at the hero as well, but due to how draining the past 3 hours were, hers wasn't as terrifying as Achiko's. At least danger sense wasn't going off anymore. Spending the past 3 or so hours with it blaring inside of her head was emotionally exhausting. Hitoshi slowly raised his head out of the dirt pile he was half buried in. Who, in their right mind, thought it would be a good idea to have a member of the top 10 chase us through that forest? He asked, giving them a tired look that almost mirrored Shota. All Might, Kana replied with a frown. I helped, Rin added. Not helping your case, Izumi growled before she pointed at Pixie Bob. You are now my least favorite member of the Wild Pussycats. Pixie Bob deflated. She knew the backlash was going to be bad, but she didn't think it was going to be this bad. She really should have warned Izumi ahead of time, maybe had the UA students start at the bottom of the cliff. Still, why did she look so grumpy and irritated? Well, you got here earlier than expected, Shota said. Normally we would have you start training after lunch, he said, pausing when all 82 students glared daggers at him. But seeing how rough the journey here was, we'll give you the rest of the day off. So, you're all dismissed. None of the students moved, or even acknowledged what the teachers had said. Instead opting to stay where they lay. Shota looked at them with a confused look on his face. IUR said you are dismissed. Do any of us look like we are capable of moving? Sen asked, his head half buried in the ground. I cannot feel any part of my body right now, Setsuna groaned, her body scattered across the place. She just did not have the strength to reform herself. Kana face-bombed. This had been one big mistake. Later that day. After the students had regained the ability to use their legs, Izumi let out a content sigh as she sat down in the warm bath. The warm water relaxed her tense and bruised muscles. She didn't know that the pussycats had an onsen, but apparently they did, and they were allowed to use it. There were no complaints. Yes, she was in a bath with over 50 other girls, but she was just too exhausted to be embarrassed by being around so many naked girls. At least the boob-groping pervy girl wasn't trying to grope her again. The UA and CI girls were keeping to opposite sides of the bath. Mainly because very few members of each group knew members from the other. But also to prevent a repeat of what happened back at the cliff. None of the UA girls wanted to be groped by that pervy girl, especially those from 1A. Even with Minoru promising to change his ways, they did not want to deal with that shit. Especially from someone worse than the smaller boy. What made it worse was that it was a fellow girl doing it. Not at all fun. So, what do you think we'll be doing tomorrow? Toru wondered, an indentation in the water being the only sign that she was present. No questions please, Izumi groaned. Head hurt. Body hurt. Just want to relax. Worry about tomorrow later. Is Izumi okay? Momo asked, a concerned look on her face. She didn't seem to be doing so well after she sensed that we were being chased. I think her danger sense technique took too much out of her, Achiko replied. We were under constant attack for several hours by Earth constructs. The very ground around us was a threat to us, not helped by having two heroes, one of whom was a member of the top 10, chasing us. It probably overwhelmed her. Izumi groaned in agreement. Her head still hurt despite danger sense not having gone off for the past few hours. Well, at least that perv from CI isn't trying to grope us, Kyoka remarked. God. Why is that girl like that? It's because she gets stronger by groping the bodies of other girls, the voice of Rolls spoke into their minds. What the fuck? Mina gasped as she looked around for the source of the voice. Who was that? Toru asked. That would be Rolls, Sue replied. She's got telepathic abilities like Eri, Ribbit. Yep, Rolls spoke into their minds. Before you ask, I'm not related to her. I'm British, she's fully Japanese. Anyway, I would like to apologize for the actions of one of the members of my sister class. Katsuragi's rather handsy. Not helped by the fact she gets stronger by groping other women. We've long since gotten used to it, but you lot haven't, so Achiko's reaction is completely justified. Just promise me that she won't do that to Izumi again, Achiko spoke to Rolls privately. I will throw her into orbit if she so much as touches her again. No promises, Rolls replied privately. Well, that's good to hear, May said. She didn't like the idea of someone else groping her friends. It's fine when she does it since she's measuring them, but that other girl looked like she was doing it for pleasure, and enjoying it far too much for the inventor's liking. So, Rolls is a telepath like Eri, right? Kyoka asked. Can't she help her with her telepathy? I can, and I will, Rolls replied. Her powers are strong but undisciplined. She lacks the training required to properly control her powers. Telepathy and telekinesis may not seem like much, but, for a young mind like Aries who's missed out on the basic training she should have received when her powers first manifested, she's dangerous. She has a point, Eri does seem undisciplined, Shiharu said. Everything rattles whenever she gets worried or scared. And she's practically always reading everyone's mind. Which is why she needs training, Rolls said. Don't worry, I'm more than happy to help her. It's the least I can do. Achiko sighed, glad that Rolls had agreed to help Eri. And herself. There was so much about herself and her abilities that she still wanted to learn. Having Rolls her in person will speed that process up. Maybe she can finally tell Izumi the truth about her. Shouldn't be too hard, she already knows about aliens thanks to Melissa. Explaining how she's a hybrid of one of the most numerous and powerful species in both the Abyss Cloud, Odysseus Cloud, and all the stars between. So you are, small question, where's Durandal and Isaac? Mina asked, looking around. Up on the wall, keeping an eye on the boys so that they don't peek at us, May replied, pointing up at the wall. Indeed, the two robots were up in the space between the two bath areas, keeping an eye on the boys, whilst the person who was supposed to be keeping their eyes on them, Kota, whom Mandalay was still looking after since his parents were still in the hospital, played something on his phone with Eri. Durandal would have preferred to have kept an eye on the CI girls. One of them did grope Azumi after all. But the two groups seemed to be keeping their distance from each other. Plus Azumi was surrounded by the rest of the 1A girls, and was adequately protected, so he was keeping watch on the boys. Minoru had looked up at them a few times. Durandal made sure to glare at him each time, causing the boy to shiver. He wasn't taking any chances, not after that stunt that pervy CI girl made. So, Kota, Eri said. How are your parents doing? They're still in the hospital. But they're recovering, Kota replied. It'll be a few more weeks before they're discharged. I hope they're discharged soon, Eri said. I want to see them in action. They sound really cool. Of course they're cool, they're heroes. Kota said with a strained smile. All heroes are cool. Well, mostly. There are some uncool ones though. But my parents are among the cool ones. You don't seem so sure about that, Eri said, looking worried. Head notched to the side. The voices around Kota's head telling her a different story. Kota frowned and lowered his head. My parents, they just dash. They just keep getting hurt. I know each time they were saved, but what if the next time something like that happens, and no mysterious individuals are around to save them? What if next time they die? I don't want to lose them. Durandal lowered his head. So he was scared of losing his parents. He could understand why. They barely survived 2 mass murders, Muscular and Moonfish, and only because someone helped them. There was no guarantee that one of these mysterious saviors would be there the next time it happened. Next time might be their last. You know, Creator May might be able to make dash, Isaac said before Durandal stopped them. Isaac, the alpha level AI said. Let me handle this. You maintain observation mode. Understood, Father, Isaac replied. Good, Durandal said before turning to Kota. Now Kid Dash, he said before he finally realized what Isaac had said and turned towards the other robot. Father? Mother told me that my body was designed after yours, and a lot of the tech came from you, Isaac replied. So, by that logic, you are my father. Durandal sighed. I am going to have words with your creator after this, he groaned. Not in any way, shape, or form ready to accept being a father. Anyway, Kota. I know that you're worried about your parents, maybe even angry at them. You have a right to be. They are your parents. They shouldn't be scaring you like that, he said. But they are also heroes. They have a duty to protect the lives of everyone around them. But, being a hero is a dangerous job. Heroes get hurt all the time. And sometimes, they die. It's something all heroes, and their families, need to be prepared for. Believe me, it hurts, knowing that the next time you see your loved ones could be the last, but you can't bottle these things up. Talk to them about it, and let them know how you feel. It'll help, not just you, but your parents as well. Don't let it fester, otherwise, it'll consume you. Isn't that what you keep telling Big Sis to do? Eri asked. Durandal nodded. Yep. Even though there are some things that she still doesn't tell anyone about, it's like I find out a new thing that she's been bottling up every week. Wait, you can hear her? Kota asked, looking up at him. Durandal nodded. Yep. Not sure how though, being an AI and all that. She has quite the interesting quirk. Telepathy, telekinesis, rewind. Quite powerful. Kota nodded. My auntie, Shino, said that her quirk doesn't work on robots. She said that their brains are incapable of receiving her messages. Indeed, Durandal said. Even a positronic brain is immune to telepathy. It's all software and hardware, not wetware like a human brain. Maybe Eri's telepathy has a bit of technopath in it. I don't know. But it's powerful. Her quirk, as complicated as it is very powerful and dangerous. She can throw someone across a room, break their bones, ravage their mind, or revert them into primordial soup. Promise me you'll keep an eye on her, okay? If she loses control, get out of there, call for help, and let a teacher deal with it. He's right, Eri added. My CU dash. My quirk, I can't control it very well. And I don't want to hurt you with it. Kota nodded. Don't worry, I'll protect her. Eri was his friend, and he wanted to help her. It's what heroes do, help people. She's been hurt too much already. Durandal nodded before he focused back on the male students below, making sure that they didn't try to peek at the girls. Hopefully, tomorrow will be a lot less hectic and stressful. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 67. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.